And we'll go ahead and start with day 7 of the summer literacy series that we're calling The Science of Reading, Bringing the Theory to Life. I'm Kristen Dwyer, and I'm the co-author of the Brain Friendly Reading Program and founded We Shall Read as a literacy nonprofit. It's based in Southeast Michigan, and we really have one goal, and that is to put tools in the toolboxes of people who are working with children, whether they're in the classroom, at another nonprofit, or parents, or want to become tutors themselves, so that you can help kiddos move up that ladder of reading. Tonight, I have with me Brittany, and she's going to help facilitate part of the training.
Hi, my name is Brittany Canestrero. I have a degree in elementary education, and I took the Brain Friendly Reading Level 1 course in the fall of 2020. After taking the training, I started my own tutoring business and have worked with dozens of students, both in person and virtually, using the Brain Friendly Reading curriculum. I'm also part of the We Shall Read leadership team, where I mentor those in the process of becoming tutors.
So tonight is the science of reading, bringing theory to life. We're going to do phrase and sentence work, and we're going to concentrate on how do you get kiddos to do some of that repeated word reading. But before we dig into that, let's talk about the science behind what it is that we're doing. That we know that there's steps to helping children read fluently, that we begin with that oral language at birth, and that we're going to focus on helping them to be able to isolate the sounds in our language, that ear training, and attach those sounds to the letters. That's the sound symbol connection. And then we start with reading and spelling individual words. The piece we're going to talk about tonight is how we then go from reading individual words to phrases and then sentences. But I added this little circle arrow in here to show you that this work is really cyclical, that it is not as linear as it sounds, because as children grow their skills in one area, they're continuing to expand them in another area. They may be reading phrases and sentences at a CVC level and still working on building the letter sound connections for vowel teams. So this work all happens at once, and we're not against reading books at all. But in a lot of programs, children are taught the sounds. They're expected to memorize words, and they learn how to decode some words, and then they're asked to read books. But we're saying if you want to support the child and give them the rungs of the ladder that they need so that they can climb up that ladder of reading, that we can spend time working with phrases, sentences, and passages, that connected text, before we ask the children to read books. It doesn't mean that very young children can't learn some puzzle words and learn how to decode CVC words and then have little decodable books that they read out of. It simply means that when we spend time with children, particularly struggling readers, working at the phrase and sentence level, that they develop fluency at that level that then translates to when they have to read connected texts, whether that's passages or whether that's books. So when we look at this triangle infographic that outlines those principles of structured literacy, this wouldn't have to be in a triangle, but it gives you the idea that the phonological skills and the letter sound connections are foundational skills, that they're key to reading and spelling well. And struggling readers are often missing automaticity with those letter sound connections. They don't have the quick and accurate recall of the sounds that go with the letters, so that when they see an X, they need to know that it says X, or when they see PH, they need to know automatically that it has a F sound. The syllable work that we talked about last night helps the children to develop the pattern recognition in the brain, so it knows what the vowel sounds say. The work we talked about last night also helps them divide a big word into its syllables in order to read and spell it. We haven't talked about morphology in this series, but it is included to a certain degree in our program, particularly when we're thinking about suffixes and base words. Tonight, we're thinking about the top of the pyramid, that syntax and semantics that are principles of a structured literacy program. Syntax means that changing the order of the words in a sentence changes its meaning. So it is a way of saying that the order of the words in the sentence are important. The cat is on the box is very different than the box is on the cat. And that's particularly important when we're working with children who are second language children. Semantics just means that words have meaning and that we can make pictures in our minds when we read. That might be with a single word, or it might be with a phrase or a sentence. Children who struggle with decoding often miss this piece because they're so busy thinking about how to actually read the word, they forget to practice making a picture in their mind. We're going to look at Scarborough's reading rope just for a second, because when we're working with phrase and sentence work, yes, it requires everything under word recognition. But it also requires that children have some vocabulary, that they understand what the words mean. And you'll see a video where a boy asks, what does that word mean? I don't know what it means. How can he have an understanding or make a picture in his mind if he doesn't know the vocabulary? And it's also true that the children need to have the background knowledge to be able to make sense out of what it is they're reading. This is particularly true when children are reading passages. If you've never played baseball, you have no idea what baseball is, you have no picture in your mind for baseball, and you're reading a passage about baseball with a bunch of vocabulary that's unfamiliar to you, it's unlikely that your comprehension is going to be very high. That's the background knowledge. All of these pieces are important. Every single one of them is a strand that gets woven together. And when they're woven together, we know that we have a skilled reader. But when pieces of these strands are missing, then we end up in trouble. This is called the simple view of reading. Those two sections that you were just looking at, word recognition and language comprehension, they work together in hand for reading comprehension to be happening or be in place. When one of them is not very well developed, I gave it a 0 here mathematically. When one of them is not very well developed, then reading comprehension suffers. So you may have a child who can decode really well, but doesn't have very strong vocabulary. They're not going to comprehend what they're reading. You may have a child who has the opposite problem. So be conscious of that when you're looking at a child in front of you who's struggling to read, when you're trying to suss out what it is that they're struggling with. The easiest place to start is to start with the word recognition component and to ask yourself, does that child have all the letter sound connections that they need? How quickly are they able to decode individual words? And the easiest way to figure that out is to use a nonsense word screener, so that they're looking at nonsense words, trying to decode those words. I just tested a 10 and a 13-year-old. I did an educational screening using a nonsense word screener. And those children had been in a very expensive private school here in Southeast Michigan for children who have dyslexia and other learning differences. And they really still struggled to decode just 3 and 4 letter nonsense words and vowel consonant E's. They hadn't developed the pattern recognition for those. They did know a lot of the sounds, but they weren't able to blend them together very accurately. But those letter sound combinations are key. And then we work with the arm spelling to help children gain the ability to break words apart and blend sounds together into words. How can you bring the theory to life and help children read phrases and sentences? Let's look at several strategies from the Brain Friendly Reading Program. Brittany is going to walk us through some of these strategies for reading phrases and cut up sentences, 2-column matching, the cup game, which is not a game that's part of the Brain Friendly Reading Program per se, because it was invented by a teacher in her classroom. And we're going to look at how to mark words and read words and sentence dictation as well. So I'm going to let Brittany take it away, and we'll start with the very first skill.
Before reading sentences, children start by reading phrases. In this video, we will watch a student practicing reading phrases. This was taken during a short I lesson. The student can recognize many words automatically and is able to sound out the words he doesn't know. So listen for how the tutor supports.
Good.
A pig.
Mm-hmm.
A in pin pick.
Good.
A d e my a pig.
Okay, let's look at that one. Does it have the A in front of it?
No.
No, it just starts with
A. Did in did win
win. Did win. Mm-hmm.
in tin tin
10.
is a da tin tinman tinman
Good.
tinman
Uh-huh.
a b in a big a bit lip
Good.
a b in a big rib. A big rib.
Rib, yeah, like you have in your body.
So from that video, you can see how the tutor encouraged him, and when he made a mistake, she just had him redo it without making him stressed out at all.
I think, Brittany, one of the things that I noticed about it was the wait time, that waiting, not saying anything while he was thinking.
Yeah, that's super important, especially when working with dyslexic students, because they need a longer wait time, and a lot of times we rush them. I've noticed that in my own tutoring. Okay, the next strategy we have is cut up sentences. For this activity, either print or write out sentences on strips of paper. Cut the words apart, and the child experiments with putting the words in an order that makes sense. Each brain-friendly reading lesson page includes sentences that work well with this activity. Here are examples of students using cut-up sentences during a tutoring session. A way to scaffold this activity is to have more words on each slip of paper so that the sentence is divided into less chunks.
Every activity that we're showing you has explicit instructions inside the training companion guide.
Oh. I got a dozen pieces of candy when I went trick-or-treating.
Good. Read the whole sentence.
I got a dozen pieces of candy when I went trick-or-treating. Put this sentence back.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Beehives. Beehives do make yummy cheese.
Which word would go first? Which one would go first, do you think?
Do,
yeah.
Beehives. Do beehives.
Tell me, why does that one go first?
Because the thing's big.
Because it has the capital D. Yep. Which one do you think goes at the end? Okay.
Let me first. I don't want to put this at the first and the.
Okay.
Do beehives make
Mm-hmm.
yummy, cheesy, soft?
No.
Do beehives make yummy, soft cheese?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but not yummy, soft cheese. They make sticky.
Do they really make yummy, soft cheese?
No, they make sticky.
No, they make honey. Right now, I want you to notice something. Do you see this little comma right here?
Yeah.
And that shows that
Something's
word.
after it.
What?
I know. And so if you have too much of and, like 3 ands, you put commas.
Yeah. So this word actually goes before yummy because.
Do beehives make soft, yummy cheese?
Mm-hmm.
Wait, but you said that's right.
Yummy soft cheese could be right, but because there's a comma right there. I know that it comes before yummy because those are two words that describe the cheese. So now start over there and read the whole thing again.
Do beehives make soft, gummy cheese?
So in the second video, you can see how the tutor asked if there was to look for the capital letter, to find the first word, and to find the punctuation mark for the last word. And I liked her little explanation about why the soft came before yummy because of the comma. Like throwing in little skills like that while you're doing something else is always really helpful, like little mini lessons.
That's perfect, isn't it? And then she couldn't really get the mini lesson in on cheese. She asked him, which one goes at the end? And then she almost gave him too much wait time, and she lost her opportunity to be like, oh, this one does because it has a question mark. That's the end punctuation. And he looks like he's keeping him on track, takes a lot of energy. And she didn't spend a lot of time explaining or trying to get him to do stuff. She just kept him focused on rereading the sentence over and over again until he had something that made sense. This is a very long sentence. And if you're looking at it, is annual trip to the museum, it isn't very fun. That doesn't make sense. And we have these other words that are here. So for this child, they have to start over again. And when you have this long of a sentence with a child who's that far off, sometimes you have to give them the first 3 or 4 words so that they have a starting place. So if you are thinking, well, what's the exact right, just right level? Sometimes you miss and you overshoot. And when you do that, then you start to think of this as more like cooperative work that you're doing together with the child. And you don't say like, oh, I made this too hard or this is too tricky. You just go, oh, I wonder if we try these 3 words at the front. Let's see what happens when we do. And you become like a child playing with them, putting the sentence together so that you can exit the activity.
All right. So similar to cut up sentences, we have 2-column matching. Using sentence strips again, cut 4 to 6 sentences in half. Place the beginning pieces in a column on the left-hand side and the end pieces in a column on the right-hand side. The child will then match the 2 halves together to create sentences that make sense. This not only reinforces the particular skill you're working on that day, but it also helps with the student's comprehension because we're trying to find sentences that make sense. In that little graphic, you can see how to do it. And this is also in the training companion guide too.
Was hot. Breeze on the beach. The dog that's mean and sweet. The tea is hot and sweet.
The tea
was hot and sweet.
Good.
Did Tim squeeze cheese on his BFF?
No.
Is the BFF the beef?
BEEF is beef.
Did Tim squeeze cheese on his beef?
Mm-hmm.
Please don't taste. Tease the dog. That's mean. Please don't tease the dog. That's mean.
Mm-hmm. One more.
I want to feel breeze on my beach. What does a breeze mean?
Breeze is the wind blowing.
I want to feel the breeze on the beach.
And it can be done in a really formal way, like the diagram shows. When you first teach it, take one front half and try it with all the second halves till you find one. With a younger child, this child's probably experienced with this activity, and he's not for like 5 years old doing this work. So, but if you had a very young child that you were doing this work with, you'd want to do it in a very controlled and predictable way. But older children, once they get the hang of it, they kind of do it the way they want to. Her students last year started having the kids do that sentence work together. where they unscrambled sentences or did 2-column matching together. And it was wonderful because they had to agree on what made sense. And this what made sense business was kind of a new idea for them. Oh, the sentence has to make sense. And then you and I have to agree that it makes sense. So it becomes a way for them to have some partner work that's really directed towards a specific goal. And when they're done, they can leave their phrase and sentences there for you to check when you're able to make your circle and walk around and take a look at their work, so that you have a way to have a little bit of a formative assessment about how they're doing with the work at hand. So I love that you're thinking about those ideas too.
Right. Next, we have the cup game. I find that this is a fun game to play with my students who enjoy playing board games. The way you play is after rolling a die and landing on either a triangle or square, students have to pick a sentence out of the corresponding cup and read it to complete their turn.
Once upon a time, Santa winked at me and checked his toy list. Once upon a time, Santa winked at me and checked his toy list.
Once you press the button on the alarm clock, it stops. Once you press the button on the alarm clock, it stopped.
2, 1, 2. I wrapped his birthday present today. I wrapped his birthday present today.
So the cup game provides for repeated reading, and this teacher had them read the sentence twice.
This is a 3rd grade teacher in South Redford, Michigan, who invented the cup game. She wanted a way to have the children be engaged in reading a sentence more than once, the first time for decoding, and then the second time to practice reading with expression, which is a key piece of fluency. When we're talking about children reading fluently, we're saying, are they accurate? Do they read with speed, or how quickly are they reading? And are they reading with expression? And often that piece is tricky. So she's worked all year getting these kids to scoop phrases. If you saw their fingers doing the arch underneath, and then reading each phrase with expression. I thought they did a great job. I love seeing them play that cup game. And she just found 2 cups and came up with something spur of the moment using the sentences in the Brain Friendly Reading program.
All right, and finally, our last strategy is marking and reading sentences. Before the child reads the sentences, have them mark the skill while saying the sound. In this video, the student is working with the vowel teams E, and EA. He highlights the skill before he reads the sentences.
E. Green. Trees. Street. Find 2 green trees on the street. E. Please. Scream. Jack, please do not scream at us. No, wait. Jack, please do not scream at us.
I like the way you made it. Your voice sound like you're talking.
3. Bees. E. Scream. 3 bees hit the screen and fell.
So that goes on for a while, where he marks the entire page reading them. But I was just thinking while I was watching him, I wonder if you were thinking the same thing, that he would really benefit from some of that rereading it again with expression. The one time he chose to do it, he was able to read with expression, wasn't he? Or after marking and reading them, you could cut those sentences up. And what we didn't include in today's work was the emoji game, where you have emojis that say if you're happy or sad or frustrated, and you turn over an emoji card and you have a sentence and you read your sentence with one expression, and you turn over another emoji card and you read the same sentence with another expression. That would be a way to extend the learning after he's done marking and reading these one time. Then you turn it into a different game, but using the same sentences. So you get that repeated reading with the sentences.
And then after reading sentences, dictating them is another way to reinforce the spelling skill of that lesson. The cups card that is kind of blurry in this picture stands for capitalization, understanding, punctuation, and spelling. In the third grade classroom Kristen was talking about earlier, that teacher has her students dictate sentences to each other and uses that cups card to make sure that they can check their sentences.
So after they get done playing the cups game, they might say, okay, now turn to your partner and pick one of the sentences that's in their pile and dictate that sentence to that child. So it's a sentence they've already read, which again helps to reinforce all of the work that they've done by doing reading and spelling with the same group of words. When you have a set of sentences that are all questions, you can create a card that is yes, and you can create a card that says no. And do you see how quickly I'm creating it? That's often what I do in a tutoring session. I am creating it while I'm working with the child, yes and no. And I would take my scissors out and I would cut this page apart and I would hand it to the child and I would say, can you tell me if this sentence is the answer to this sentence is yes, or is this sentence no? Go ahead and mark it and then decide, is it yes or is it no? And the child will read, can a mantis be a pet? It is an insect. Well, can you have insects for pets? What is an insect? Maybe we don't know what that is. Maybe we don't know what a praying mantis is. I've had teachers very quickly on their phones look up pictures and show it to children, particularly who are newcomers. And then you hand them the next strip and they mark the words on their strip and they read it and they put it where it goes. And all the while over here, you're cutting strips apart from your page. And this becomes an almost no prep activity for you as the children are doing the majority of the work. And that's okay. This doesn't have to be saved, but you could put it inside of an envelope and send it home with the children. You could also save it for tomorrow. And this could be a review activity, particularly if you work in children with small groups. You could give them their set of sentences and their yes, no. And while you're prepping that day's work, you can say, read your sentences again and decide if they're yes or they're no. And you get repeated reading with the sentences with an activity that children are familiar with that they enjoy doing because they're getting they have some agency over their work. Is it yes or is it no? So that is the majority of the work that we were going to show you tonight. Every single lesson that's in the BFR Training Companion Guide has sentences on it. And most have phrases, but like on this Silence Blends page, if you wanted to use phrases, you can just pull phrases out of the sentences that are here. And the people that we've shared it with to pilot it have been loving using it. And they're using it even in summer school with the kids with the cups game. You can see down here that where phrase and sentence work comes in is really, when we teach a new concept and we use some word study, if the children are ready to do phrase and sentence work, then of course we loop that phrase and sentence work in. If they're not ready, then we don't include the phrase and sentence work, but it's definitely the pathway to building a fluent reader, a skilled reader. So if you've been here, you know you can jump on Brain Friendly Reading and We Shall Read. Both shops have materials in them and videos. Also, there's YouTube channels for both of them. The Tools in 10 Bite-Sized PD will be part of the Monday night group coaching calls that will continue starting July 10th and through the school year. And there's the Tips for Tutors. Brittany and another trained tutor who both tutor full-time have shared in really compact videos a ton of information that other companies charge $50, $60, $70, $80 for on how to set up your tutoring business, the things to be thinking about, the kinds of materials that you need in terms of parent forms and gives you a really good overview of how to make your tutoring business more professional and how to expand your business so that you could tutor full time if that's something that you want to do. And of course, the asynchronous training program is always available through We Shall Read. We'll be hosting, it looks like 5 to 6 in-person trainings in Southeast Michigan this fall. They will be in the Southfield office, and we'll be back at the Dearborn Public Library in the winter of 2024. And we will be someplace hopefully another library. If you know of a library who might like to host us, let us know. We're talking to local libraries in the Detroit metro area. We also offer professional development for schools and other nonprofit organizations. So those are all ways that you can connect with this work more if you are new to brain-friendly reading.